Good morning, boys and girls. We're ready to start class again. Mrs. Hannah taught you on Wednesday night. Last Sunday, I taught you on the book of Genesis. She taught you on Exodus, but I don't think she got finished with Exodus, did she? So what we want to do is remember a little bit about Exodus. The Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, remember? They were slaves, and God sent Moses to deliver them. He used the plagues, God's plagues, to persuade Pharaoh. It took 10 of those, though, to persuade him. And at the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn child, God instructed the Israelites to have a Passover feast. And they were to sacrifice a lamb and put the blood on their doorpost over the top of their door. And any house that had that blood on the door, then there would not be any death in that family. Death would pass over them. That's why it's called the Passover. And so they did that, and the Israelites were fine. They did not have any deaths. But Egypt, oh me, that land of Egypt, every house had someone that was a firstborn that died, and it was so sad. But when even Pharaoh's house had death too, and at that time he said, "Go, I don't want you here anymore. Go." So he sent them away, and they traveled until they got to the Red Sea. And here's this broad sea in front of them, and it's huge. It's just a huge sea. And how are they going to get across it? Now, mind you, these Israelites were in number close to 1 million. Some say 1 million people left Egypt. 1 million Jews left Egypt. And how do you get that many people across that big body of water? So here they're wondering, what are they going to do? They're getting panicky. And lo and behold, they look behind them, and there's Pharaoh coming with his entire army. Oh me, oh my, what do? So they felt trapped. They felt utterly trapped until God told Moses to stretch his rod out over the sea. And when he did, the sea parted. And it opened up wide. And the ground underneath, usually muddy and watery, where it was dry ground. And people walked across that river, that Red Sea, on dry ground. Can you believe that? And until they all got to the other side. Well, Pharaoh's watching this, and he says, well, if they can go across, we can go across too. So here they marched, Pharaoh's army, into the sea on dry ground. The only trouble was God was not with them. And when they got right into the sea, to the middle of the sea, the mud started creeping up on the chariot wheels, and the water started seeping in, and then all of a sudden the walls of water collapsed on them, and that entire army was gone. So Pharaoh was defeated, utterly defeated in that. So here are the Israelites now going until into the wilderness. They're in the wilderness now, and when they get into the wilderness, they begin to do something that plagues them through many times there, and that is one word that they did that was really did not please God at all, and that was they complained. They began complaining the minute they got over across the Red Sea, and they complained all throughout that wilderness wandering. It was really pitiful. Have you ever been around somebody that complained all the time? Complained about the weather, complained about how they felt. They complained about the heat. They complained about the cold. it's annoying, isn't it? And ungrateful. And God had blessed them so much by taking them out of that land. So the first thing they complained about was food. How are they going to feed 1 million people? And here they're questioning God. Instead of trusting him and believing him, they're questioning God, and they complained against Moses and Aaron about this. Instead of trusting in God, who had just done all of those plagues upon Egypt and had just gotten them across the Red Sea, could he not provide food? Sure. But they didn't do that. They decided to complain. So God told Moses to tell the people that in the morning they were going to have bread. So what happened was, when they went to bed that night and woke up the next morning, you know how dew is on the ground? Well, on the ground was manna. Manna is like a wafer, a type of bread. And they called it the bread of angels because it came from above. So here's this manna all over the ground, and the people could go out and gather it up in their baskets and eat and eat and eat. And so that gave them food. But it wasn't long before they started complaining again. And this time it was about water. How are they going to wash that bread down without water? And how can you get that much water for that many people in the wilderness? So they complained against it to Moses and Aaron. And God told Moses to use his rod and strike a rock. And when Moses struck the rock, water came gushing out of that rock and gave water to all of the people there. They were not thirsty anymore. Well, they traveled and traveled and traveled. I don't know if you can see this map or not, but they were up here in Egypt, and they had to go all the way down this way right here, long distance, and until they get to Mount Sinai. And that's a mountain. They called it the mountain of the Lord because God came down on that mountain. Well, when they were camped there, Moses told them that he was going to go up on the mountain and talk to God. And while he was up there, God gave him the 10 commandments that were on 2 tablets of stone. And the stone probably had 5 on one and 5 on the other. Who knows? But do you know who wrote those commandments on the stone? It wasn't Moses. God wrote those commandments with his own hand, with his own fingers. He wrote those commandments. And the commandments were, 1, do not worship any other gods. And number 2, do not make any idols. 3, do not misuse the name of God. Don't take it in vain. When you're using God's name, use it correctly. 4, keep the Sabbath day, that's Saturday, keep it holy. 5, honor your father and mother. 6, do not murder. 7, do not commit adultery. 8, do not steal. 9, do not lie. And 10, do not covet. Covet means wanting something that someone else has so much that you would do anything, even something bad, to get it. That's wanting something too much, isn't it? So that's what those laws were. And then while he was up there, God gave him many other instructions as well. And God gave laws and instructions about how to build the tabernacle. And the tabernacle was supposed to be 60 feet in one room and 30 feet in another. And they were supposed to have 2 rooms, one larger, one smaller. the large one was supposed to be called the holy place, and the smaller one was the most holy place. And in those rooms were certain things that the priests would use. In the holy place was the lampstand and the table of showbread and the altar of incense. And then when you moved from that room into the back room, the most holy place, there was the Ark of the Covenant. And that was a box, just a big, big box. And in it was the Ten Commandments. And there were some symbols above it, two angels that sat above it facing each other. And when God would come down to talk to the priest or whoever, his glory would be over that ark. And it was majestic. It was beautiful. Anyway, they while Moses was up there on the mountain getting all these instructions, the people were down below at the foot of the mountain, and they were getting scared because Moses had been gone 40 days. And do you know anybody else in the New Testament that was gone 40 days in the wilderness? Would that be Jesus, maybe, when he was tempted by Satan? Yeah, I think so. He was gone 40 days and 40 nights. So Moses was gone 40 days. The people thought he was dead. Maybe a lion got him or a bear ate him up. They didn't know. They just thought he was gone and that he wouldn't come back. So they panicked, and they came to Aaron and said, "Aaron, would you build an idol for us?" And bless his heart, Aaron, I couldn't believe it. He did it. After going through all of that with Moses, he built them a golden calf. And they began to worship it. And they began to do ugly things around it, bad things around it when they worshiped. And when Moses got finished up in the mountaintop and came down, he heard a lot of laughter and a lot of noise. And what happened was the people were having a big old party. And Moses thought, what is going on? And what was going on was they were having that worshiping idols. Well, Moses came down, and when he saw them worshiping that golden calf, he just about lost it. He got so mad, he took the tables of stone and he threw them down, and they broke into a bunch of pieces. And, it's so sad that the people were that unbelieving, that they were that, their faith was so small. Well, Moses took that golden calf and he crushed it, he pounded it until it was dust, and he put that dust into their water and made them drink it. Isn't that disgusting? But he made them drink it. And then he said, I'm going to return to the mountain. And he did. And God gave him another set of the Ten Commandments that he could take down. So the Jews were sometimes good to obey, but many times they disappointed God and disobeyed. God gave them laws, and if they obeyed them, then they were rewarded. If they disobeyed them, then they were punished. And that was a standard. That's something that was true in the Old Testament. It's true today. If your parents give you a rule and you understand it and you obey that rule, then good things will happen. But if they give you that rule and you understand it and you disobey, there's going to be punishment. So that's important to know. It happened then, and it happens today too. the Jews built that tabernacle of God, and I love the way Exodus ends. It says several times that Moses did all the Lord commanded him to do. Isn't that beautiful? I hope people can say that about me when I come to the end of my life. Well, Moses wasn't quite at the end of his life, but he did do that. Well, just to recap, Genesis was the key word is beginning, because Genesis means beginning, and it covers 2,500 years. And the red ribbon, that is the blood of Christ, was that God said that the child of a woman would crush the head of the serpent. That's Satan. And what happened was the woman's child was Jesus, and the serpent was Satan. And when Satan hurt Jesus when he was on the cross, Satan hurt him badly, but he didn't destroy him. But when Jesus rose from the grave on that Sunday morning, he dealt Satan a crushing blow to the head. That was not anything Satan wanted. So that's the scarlet thread about that one. And then Exodus, this is our Exodus page. If I can get it apart here. And the key word in Exodus is exit. That's what Exodus means. And it covers about 400 years. And the red ribbon in that is the Passover lamb sacrificed so that the Jews could leave the bondage in Egypt. And today, Jesus is our Passover lamb. In fact, in the book of John, chapter 1, verse 35, John the Baptist saw Jesus coming to him. Jesus was coming to him to be baptized by John. And when John saw him coming to him, John said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." So that was Jesus' role when he came to earth, to be the sacrificial lamb. Nobody made him do that. Nobody told him he had to do it. The Father in heaven didn't even tell him that he had to do it. Jesus did it because he wanted to do it. He loved me and he loved you that much. Now, we're going to get into the next book, and the next book is Leviticus. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. And I love Leviticus because, number one, it's got a lot of rules, and I forgot something. I forgot to do the questions at the end of Exodus. Let's do those first. Number one, the questions. Exodus means exit. Number two, Exodus covers 400 years. And then 3, the book begins with the children of Israel at Egypt. And then 4, the book closes with the children of Israel at Mount Sinai. And 5, 3 signs that God gave Moses to prove to Pharaoh that he was God's spokesman was the water that turned to blood, the rod, his rod that turned into a snake, and then Moses' hand that was leprous. It was sick and diseased when he put it in his coat, and when he came out, it was well again. Number 6, Moses' father was Amram. And number 7, Moses' mother was Jochebed. And Moses' wife was Zipporah. Moses' brother and sister were Aaron and Miriam. And number 10, Moses' father-in-law was Jethro. And number 11, name the 10 plagues. Number 1, water turned to blood. Number 2, frogs. Number 3, lice. Number 4, flies. Number 5, the cattle died. Number 6, boils. Number 7, hail. Number 8, locusts. Number 9, darkness. And number 10, the death of the firstborn. And the last question there, number 12, is name the 10 commandments. I'm not going to give those out because we just talked about those a few minutes ago. But that answers all the questions on the question page. I do want you to do something this next week, just thinking about, through the week, thinking about Exodus. I want you to be able to identify some of the characters in Exodus, the book of Exodus. Identify Moses, identify Aaron, Amram, Jochebed, identify Pharaoh, who Pharaoh was, and just some of the key characters in the book of Exodus. And then next, I'd like for you to make a list of hopefully 10 lessons or applications you can learn from the book of Exodus. For instance, you could learn that you should obey and honor your father and mother, that's something that God wants all of us to do, not just the Israelites. He wants all of us to do that. And we need to check and make sure, am I honoring my mom and dad? Am I obeying them? So that's one application you could have. And then the third thing is, the word murmur and complain is used 8 times in Exodus 16. So how did God react to their complaints? He did not like them at all. So I want you to make a complaint page at your home somewhere. And I want you to write down every time that you complain about something and see how full that list gets. And we'll talk about that hopefully next week. All right, so that was your assignment. Now we'll get into Leviticus. Leviticus key words are Levites and priests, offerings and feasts. Levites and priests, offerings and feasts. So it's not just one word, it's not just one key word. It's a phrase, like a rhyme too. Levites and priests. Levites were from the tribe of Levi, and Moses and Aaron were both from that tribe. So they could have been priests. In fact, Aaron was the first high priest. But the Levites were the priestly tribe. They took care of the tabernacle and took care of the duties inside the tabernacle, and that was their job. And then the offerings and feasts, they took care of that as well too. There were many offerings that they were commanded to have, and many feast days. Feast of Unleavened Bread, just all kinds of Passover was one of the feast days. So they were to take the offerings when they came, and to organize and take care of these feast days. And what is the red ribbon? Well, the red ribbon is that Jesus is our high priest. We learn about that in Hebrews chapter 7, verses 20 to 24. Jesus is our high priest. We can go to him when we're hungry, or when we're thirsty, or when we're sad and lonely. We can go to him at any time and just pour our hearts out to him, because he is our high priest. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thought. Okay, so there are a couple of things in the book of in the book of Leviticus, that I think are really, really interesting to notice. And most of the book of Leviticus is nothing but the laws and the things that they were supposed to do, in the tabernacle, and the rules, the instructions for what they could do, for what they could not do in worship to God. Worship was very, very important, and it was mostly important to do it God's way instead of my way or His way. Whenever people get into the notion that they want to design worship to fulfill their own pleasure, that they want to do what they love to do, that's a dangerous position to be in. And the reason we know that is because Aaron's two sons, Nadab and Abihu, came and they were helping their father Aaron and the priest in the tabernacle as priests, and they came and they used the wrong kind of fire. God specified a type of fire that He wanted used, and they used another fire, a fire that God had not spoken about, and God called it profane fire because it was not what He wanted. And when they offered that fire, God sent down fire from heaven and it burned them up. The fire went out from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. And Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke, saying, 'By those who come near me I must be regarded as holy, and before all the people I must be glorified.'" You see, Nadab and Abihu were not regarding God as holy. They were doing it their way. To have made sense that they were doing it in giving God His due honor and praise for being holy, they would have done it His way. But no, they didn't do that. They did it their way. So we need to be careful about that ourselves. So Nadab and Abihu, that's a big lesson to learn from that book, and that one account is slapped right in the middle. I think it's chapter 10 or 11. Let's see, it's chapter 10. So it's almost right in the middle of the book of Leviticus, and it's kind of sandwiched in between all of those laws and offerings and feasts and all the instructions that went with that. So it's one of the few instances where people were relating what happened. So the people listened to all these things, and they were anxious to obey. Sometimes they had trouble doing that, obeying, but most of the time, there at the beginning, they were able to do that. They had laws about marriage. They had laws about people who were not Jews wanting to become Jews. They had laws about just about everything, and God gave those to Moses in Leviticus. I think that's about it. There was a man who, and I can't find the reference, but a man who came to worship God, and he on a Saturday when he was supposed to be worshiping God, he was out gathering sticks for a fire, and that was against God's law. God said, "Do nothing on the Sabbath day, keep it holy," and God struck him dead just like that. He didn't even get a chance to say anything. God just struck him dead. So again, God wants us to worship Him His way and not our way. Leviticus ends with a strong warning. Moses tells the people, actually God tells them through Moses, he said, "If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and perform them, then I will give you rain in this season. The land shall yield its produce, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Your threshing shall last till the time of vintage, and the vintage shall last till the time of sowing. You shall eat your bread to the full, and dwell in your land safely. I will give you peace throughout. I will give you peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none will make you afraid. I will rid the land of evil beasts, and the sword will not go through your land. You will chase your enemies, and they shall fall by the sword before you. Your enemies shall fall by the sword before you. So, this is something that God wanted them to understand, that if they would obey His commands, He would give them protection, a lot of protection. But the opposite of that is, He said, but if you do not obey me and do not observe all of these commandments, and if you despise my statutes, my rules, or if your soul abhors my judgments, so that you do not perform all of my commandments, but break my covenant, I will also do this to you. I will even appoint terror over you, wasting disease and fever, which shall consume the eyes and cause sorrow of heart. And you shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. And he goes on and on about the horrible things. If they do not keep God's law, a lot of horrible things are going to come their way. That's God's way of punishing them. But Leviticus is a good book. It teaches us a lot about the things that they had to do. And we're going to stop right there, and Miss Hannah will pick up with the book of Numbers. And remember, we're following that red ribbon, Jesus, from the beginning of the Bible to the end. And we're slowly creeping up. We had 2,500 years with Genesis, and we had 400, so that's 2,900. And we're creeping up on that 4,000 years, aren't we? And it won't be long. So I've enjoyed this. I hope you have too. And we'll see each other again soon. Goodbye.